Hi, I'm Eddie Obeng, and this is How. Daily, I bring you a different tip or trick to try and make life more fascinating, more fun. Today, I'm going to share with you a technique I used once in Nottingham, and it transformed a lot of my life. And it led to things like my development of how to rebuild teams so that the teams work better. It was a meeting I went to at a company called Boots the Chemist, and for the first time in a sales environment, in a environment of trying to understand the client's needs, I used this method of trying to be frank, and I'm going to share with you how it works. So let's go into Cube and see what we can find. Great. Well, welcome to Cube, where the sun is always shining. The venue today is the Cube orientation. You'll see on the image in front of you here that this is a drawing by the amazing Steve Renshaw, who was trying to explain what happens on Cube. And he's got things like, lead and learn, collaborative environments. And he created this diagram. And we thought, why don't we build this diagram on Cube? So we did. So this is our orientation. And we're going to go and look at collaboration environments so we can actually take a look at this pet. So Becoming Frank. So I'll tell you the back story behind this. It's really straightforward. In my teenage years, my friend Howard Baker gave me a book called Illusions by Richard Bach. And in it, there was a guru called Don Shimoda who managed to change the mind of the person who he was meeting with, who was an aviator. It's a long story. In my early days as a tutor, I read this amazing book called The Goal from Ellie Goldratt. And in there was another guru called Jonah. And Ellie Goldratt had used the idea of Jonah from the Bible, because Jonah apparently is the only prophet in the Bible who anyone listened to. Now, that's fascinating, isn't it? And he manages to explain what's going on there. I then realized when I re-looked at these books with different eyes that what was going on there was a Socratic process. It was a process of trying to get people to understand and what was going on. But instead of using the Socratic process primarily for finding causes, they were using it for changing people's minds. So when I wrote All Change, my bestseller, I tried to explain how to use Socratic thinking for changing people's minds. So in All Change, if you've read it, you'll find that there's a character called Frank, who's a sort of friendly, know-it-all character, who manages to get people to change their minds, but without falling out with them. So I want to help you learn how to persuade people and how to influence people and how to move forward without conflict. So the structure behind it, really simple. The structure behind it all is Socratic dialogue. So the funniest joke in the world, apparently, is this one. Holmes and Watson, Sherlock Holmes, the great detective, go camping. When they go camping, in the middle of the night, Holmes jabs Watson in the ribs and says, Watson, can you see the stars? And Watson says, yes, I can see the stars. He says, what does that tell you? And Watson says, it tells me that it'll be a lovely day today. And he shivers. He says, no, come on. What does that tell you? It tells me the universe is huge and probably infinite. Sherlock Holmes is getting frustrated. He says, come on, Watson, what does that tell you? And Watson says, it shows that God exists and this is an amazing firmament. And Holmes jabs him again and they shiver again. He says, no, Watson. What it tells me, as he pinches Watson, who goes, ow, he says, what it tells me, Sherlock Holmes, the great detective, is that someone has stolen our tent. And that's Socratic analysis. It's a bubble diagram. Basically, what Holmes does is he works out the causes, but what Watson does is he says, if this, then that. Watson is never going to understand the complexity of the situation, but it's that if-then trick, which we're about to use. Because when you disagree with somebody, it's easy to say, I don't agree with you. But if instead of arguing with them, when he says, it means it's a great firmament, he says, so if that's true then, and then you ask the person about the then part, they have to argue, and you're not actually arguing with their understanding of the situation. And that's what Becoming Frank is about. It's about learning how to communicate and persuade somebody without ever arguing with them. So what happens is you go, right, you ask somebody something, they say, the reason that the world is so bad is because people are not good enough. And you go, oh my goodness, people have been people for billions of years. That can't be the reason, okay? So you say, why does that happen? Oh, well, the people just don't do the right thing. So they tell you the wrong thing. So this is what they said here is people do the wrong thing. So you say, if it's all about people doing the wrong thing, then there won't be any circumstances where the world's gone funny despite people not being involved. And then you think to yourself, are there any things which are happening on the planet which are happening despite people being good? And you go, well, I don't know. We're still having children's parties. I'm just making out. And so but last week I went to my 3-year-old's party and everyone had a good laugh. So what you've done is you've proved that it's not about people being bad, but you've said it without arguing with them. You don't argue with what they say. You argue with the effect of what they say. And generally what they'll go is they'll go, well, I didn't mean everyone was bad. I mean some people. So they shift their position. And you've moved them to shift their position. Now you can work on some people are bad. Is that really the cause? If that was so, then all the bad things would be attributed to a few people rather than to, and so you slowly work your way through it. But it's all about saying the magic words in your head after you've heard their statements. They make a statement. You think in your head, if this, then that. You ask about the then. They then shift their position. And you can use it to get people to move. And that's what happened that afternoon in Nottingham, because all I did was when they told me what their challenges were, I just went, if this, then that. And I asked them about the challenges. And the whole group of senior managers, the tap dance, and eventually they realized what the real causes were. And we went on and we did some great business together. So that's it. Okay, that's Becoming Frank. I hope you found that useful. The quick guide, as always, is on cube.cc/pets/quick guide. And this will always be somewhere in one of my newsletter summaries. Subscribe. Bye.